Y'all ain't gotta get quiet just because I turned the music off. Let's
Right,
clap it
we
up
can
up
keep
in
it
here,
going.
everybody. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. We finna get it started.
Church girls getting naughty. Let it go, girl.
Cool. Hi, Niccara.
Hi, Brandon. Wow.
Wow.
We're doing this.
This is wild. So, for those of y'all who are here mainly because of our guests,
Fair.
we are Butt Making Books. We're gonna kick things off the way we always do. I'm Brandon.
I'm Niccara, and welcome to another episode of ... Butt Making Books.
A pie. That's like y'all do know. Okay, cool. We're a podcast where the goal is to bookishly heal through life. So all of our episodes, which are available wherever you get your episodes of podcasting and stuff, our podcast is about talking about things that are familiar to everyone: family, America, racism, sexuality, all these things. But we use books that have been written, that we've read and that we've enjoyed as a sort of springboard into those types of conversations. So familiarity, but also maybe something different, get you excited, jazzed about reading, because that's something that we're excited about, both readers.
Avid.
So, that's why we're here. And we're going to kick things off. I got the mic, so I get to ask you first.
Oh.
We're going to kick things off the way we always do on our podcast, which is a sort of wellness check-in, a mental check-in. So, Niccara, how are you?
I'm stressed. There's been a lot of stuff happening personally in my life with sickness and everything like that. And this is like my shining moment. I'm trying to let things not stress me out as much as they used to. And that is hard. I am trying to use the tips that I learned in Rest is Resistance by the Nat Ministry herself. And it's hard in a capitalist system when you're trying to fight against the machine and also like live your life holistically yourself. So it's been tough, but now I get to kick it over to you. How are you, Brandon?
I'm good. I often hate that question, but I love that question all at the same time. But I'm in a place where it's like, life is life in the way it always lifes, and won't get off my neck, whatever. But I'm having abundance of gratitude today. I'm really truly grateful to see all of y'all, for real. But then also it's like there's a African proverb called Sankofa. I'm feeling a touch of that too. I used to work here years ago, and so to be back in this space, kind of doing my thing now, is I feel like there's something that I have to go back and get, which is the nutshell version of Sankofa. And I feel like I'm getting a portion of it, but I don't know yet. So it's just great to start that process.
It's okay. We all touching Jesus' home.
You know what I mean? Exactly. So just a touch.
Just a touch.
So this is also just insane in a great way. We've been doing this for a little while, and so to be here, again, gratitude. So I won't harp too much on how grateful I am that y'all are here, but this is kind of fast for us, and so to see this really makes us feel supported and loved in a way that we would love to continue to give back, by way of having some really great events and authors for y'all to be able to participate in and listen, even if you're just listening to the podcast, whatever. The first one, our inaugural, comes from, a badass, if you ask me. Somebody who's pretty top tier.
Top tier, top 5-star chick.
5-star chick. So I'm going to go ahead and read this little bio that I have. Our author today has a debut short collection called The Secret Lives of Church Ladies, which won the 2021 Penn Faulkner Award for Fiction, the 2020-2021 Story Prize, and the 2020 LA Times Book Prize. The Art Seidenbaum Award for First Fiction, and was a finalist for the 2020 National Book Award for Fiction. The National Book Award is a big deal for those who don't know. They all are big deals, but National Book Award, major. The Secret Lives of Church Ladies focuses on Black women, sex, and the Black church, and is being adapted for television by HBO Max with Tessa Thompson executive producing. HBO Max is also a big deal, in case you didn't know that.
Yeah, if you didn't know.
Deesha is also a Cambilio Fiction Fellow and a Baldwin for the Arts Fellow. The debut novel, The True Confessions of First Lady Freeman, is forthcoming from Mariner Books, an imprint of HarperCollins in 2025. Everybody, please help us welcome Deesha Philyaw.
Thank you.
Thank
Both
you.
Of
Oh, thank you.
Hi, Deesha.
Hello.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you.
So you heard us. So we kick it off, and so we're going to kick the question off to you. How are you?
I am doing well. I have not slept in my own bed since September 25th, though.
Wow.
So
Ooh.
I've been going. I started with Beyonce in New Orleans.
Right, because the church girls were acting nice.
Yes. And I just figured I'm on this coast, so I just, stayed over and did, a number of things. Been in New York, and then now here to be here with you all. So I'm good.
Good. Thank you so much.
We're blessed to have you.
We are.
Seriously.
We are blessed to have you for sure. So today, as you know, we're here to, of course, celebrate, talk about you and like your very successful work, The Secret Lives of Church Ladies, and a short story anthologic series that you wrote. And before we get into it, we're going to just kind of get into the snowball,
which is what we do in our podcast. So if you guys aren't from Baltimore, the snowball is like our traditional thing. Yes, we know New Orleans, they talk about it too, but like, come on, like it's Baltimore. So, I stay in my city. So we call our icebreaker a snowball. So we're going to go to our snowball.
And our question, I don't think it's great. What is your favorite gospel song?
Oh, goodness. Soon and Very Soon. Oh, I'm going old school.
Old school,
right. Old school.
Hey, we'll get to it. Well, maybe I don't know, but like you put "I Love You, Lord" today in the book, and I was like, now that one, that's that takes me back to church, like my church back home for sure.
Yes, that was the love offering song.
Exactly.
The many churches I went to, so the pastor and his wife would stand in the front of the church, and people will pass and give a special offering, love offering to them. Mm-hmm. So that song lives in my head.
Okay. Love it.
All right, B, what's you?
We kind of touched on the genre of mine. If y'all caught them, use the playlist. Which, by the way, I did curate it, but technically Deesha created it. If you read the book, then everything you heard on the playlist in some way, shape, or form is in the book too. So I threw Kirk Franklin up there. And so I was definitely like the New Nation Project era, right? But specifically, my favorite is from God's Property. The Storm Is Over Now. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So see, exactly, exactly, yeah. So
mine's is Let Go by Dwayne Woods, and it's like a kind of a cut, but it just talks about perseverance and letting God lead you. If you believe in God, then you should let go of all your worries. And I keep trying to preach that in my own life. If I trust in him, then that is my blind faith. So that's what I listen to whenever I'm in a rough time. Let go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, all right. The snow is bald.
The snow is bald.
So now it's pretty simple structure for how we wanted to do this today. We have some questions, having read it and studied it and all that good stuff. Wanted to share and ask you that you'll share with everybody.
Okay.
And then towards the back end, we are going to throw it out to you all. So be thinking about questions that you may have. We'll have time for a couple of them. So y'all can start thinking that. Niccara, you want to go first?
Yeah. So let me just start off, because I always say this book has changed me in ways that I didn't think it could. It made me think more about religion, Black women's sexuality in the church, how men use sexuality in a lot of ways to overlord their power in a way. So I wanted to ask, where did the inspiration for Church Ladies come from?
So initially, I didn't know I was writing a collection. So the first story that appears in the collection is a story called Eula. And like a lot of the other stories, I just was writing from a place of nostalgia and memory and living. I lived in Pittsburgh for 25 years, but I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida. And what I brought with me, even after I left the church, because I was no longer in the church when I was working on these stories, was the women in the church, the women outside of the church, who shaped me either directly or indirectly. I was always watching Black women to see what was possible, but also just trying to make sense of what I was learning in church and then the real world. And I kind of did everything right according to what the church said. You know, I did not have children before I was married. I married a man. You know, I did all of these things, and then it's like, but something just was missing. And so around the time that I was a new, you know, my daughter was maybe 2, my oldest daughter was maybe 2, I started just thinking back to those days and the questions that I had, and it's like, oh, this is womanhood. This is what it means to be a woman and a mother, and thinking about those women who I had spent so much time watching and wondering about them. Things like, you know, because everything was so black and white in the churches that I came up in. So I'm looking at the women outside of the church, and they're like, they dress better. I mean, well, the church women in church were dressed in nice, of course, you know, don't get me wrong, but you know, they would dress freer, I guess I should say. They played cards, they danced, and so it's like, oh, they're having more fun, but they're going to hell. I just don't know, like, trying to reconcile this, you know. And so that really stuck with me, you know. That, like, kids are so impressionable, and so I brought that into my own womanhood. A lot of these questions, but when I was watching women, and as I was becoming a woman, I had questions about their sexuality. All these rules in church: don't have sex before you're married, don't masturbate. And so I wondered, like, how were they navigating all of that? So I spent a lot of time, and so they just kind of lived in me. And when I started writing, I had my own, you know, frustrations and doubts and dissatisfaction, but was not confident enough to write it as nonfiction. And so I gave my dissatisfaction to these women that they were part memory and part imagination, you know. And so those were the early stories. And then by the time, you know, a decade or more had passed and I was, you know, working on Eula, they were still with me, but I actually knew how to write by then. I had to learn how to write.
So what, just thinking about like how we sort of fashion specifically young girls in the church, what is the goal from your perspective? What is the goal in that rearing, that doctrine that is being passed on from the, I don't want to color what I think, but like, because I would love to hear your words. But,
I'll probably say it.
You'll probably say it. So cool. You go.
She said it.
Right, she did.
And you know, and to be fair, you know, we were talking earlier. There are progressive evangelical. I don't know, progressive evangelical. There are progressive Christian churches, but when the church that I am imagining and that, you know, lives in my stories, it's the church that I grew up with that is still very real and very prevalent today. So that's what I'll answer with that in mind. And it's all in service of patriarchy, and it's all in service, I mean, and it's all very misogynistic, you know. And so, you know, we're taught from the beginning that some, you know, womanly things are evil and wrong. And, you know, the traditional story of Eve, you know, cast her in a particular light. But there's, you know, the responsibility, even for men, we're responsible for men's behavior. You know, we're responsible for everybody, ourselves, men, you know, don't tempt men. And so all it serves is to teach girls to continue to serve the patriarchy, and to not love themselves, and also to not love other women. You know, the distrust, you know, how many women do you know, like, I don't trust women, saying that about, you're a woman, you know. And I think the roots of that is from the very beginnings of how we're introduced to gender, and, you know, who gets to preach, who gets to lead. I've been in churches when I was growing up where women couldn't teach men, you know. And so that gives a girl a view of girlhood and womanhood as a second-class citizen. So to serve, you know, we're in this era again where people are talking about it, but being submissive, you know, playing small, playing second. So none of it teaches us to take up space. So whatever the opposite, you know, play small, be seen and not heard, all of those things. I think that's what happens. And so many of us have to unlearn that, because even when you physically leave the church, it doesn't leave you. And that's something I've heard from a lot of women, that in reading these stories, that, you know, these are the stories and the teachings that we've been hearing for as long as we can remember, and we're taught things at church that are reinforced at home, and then vice versa. And so you're getting the message from everywhere. And then, don't get me to start preaching now. I was about to say, then it's like anything from the culture you're told is of the devil, and don't trust it. So anybody trying to tell you you don't have to be like this, or girls can do anything they want, you can't. You're supposed to not listen to that. So it's the perfect con, you know.
It really is. And you're talking about it now, but one of my favorite stories, we were talking about it a little bit earlier, is peach cobbler. And Brandon was talking about that as well as like something. One, it was his favorite dessert as a boy from Richmond. However, I want to talk about, we've seen a spike in millennials and Gen Z trying to delve into generational trauma. And in peach cobbler, the mother-daughter relationship experiences a birth of trauma in their bond due to their involvement with the men in their lives. And so why do we think we're hesitant to deal with generational trauma in a more direct approach? And I think you talked about it a little bit, how you're going to do that in this new phase.
So I'm Gen X, and I feel like we're the cusp generation, right? The boomers and the generation before the boomers don't talk about, we're not supposed to tell the family secrets, don't air the dirty laundry. Gen Xers, we're kind of in the middle. I think half of us agree with that, and the rest of us are like, no, this is how we get free. No, that we got to talk about it. No, we can't protect terrible people who have harmed us, or institutions that have harmed us. And then the millennials and Gen Z, they're all in. They're telling things most of us don't even want to know. It's like it's bearing everything. So I'm writing from that place of like being in the middle and being raised by people and who didn't, my mother and my grandmother, who horrible things happened to them that shaped their lives, that shaped my life because of who they were, that we weren't supposed to talk about. And I just have, been on the receiving end of how keeping secrets, it really can, it kills you. It kills the body, it kills the spirit. And so I wanted to write stories that were the things that Black women would say to each other if we could speak these things aloud, or even if we could just speak them to ourselves. Well, what do we say to each other? What do we say to ourselves that we're not supposed to say? And it's not always scandalous. It's protecting other people. And so, I have a daughter who is a young millennial, and I have a daughter who's Gen Z, and it's been interesting, seeing their development. And I think they're both observant like I am, watching, and I've heard from them that, they watch and learn things from me and from my friends. But they can, the things that they say to me, I never would say to my mother. I would never talk to my mother about these things, And sometimes I'm like, ooh, I am Gen X. I don't think I wanted to know all that,
My dad tells me that all the time. He's like, I know you love me and we're comfortable. But
love me a little
you could have
less.
kept that. Yeah, love me a little less.
Less candidly.
Stop being so comfortable.
So it's I feel like my generation is that kind of sweet spot of, and the book is intergenerational because I was raised in a family, where my grandmother was present, and for a while, even my great grandmother lived with us. So there were 4 generations of us in the house. So, seeing how, the trauma, because my great grandmother didn't do right by my grandmother didn't do right by my mother, and and I could just see it, and then then I'm part of that system as well, and so it shows up in the stories.
In that, it's interesting because I feel like I had a question and then I've been reshaping it ever since you got here. We started talking, honestly. And so, but it's kind of in that sort of like, it's in the secrecy, but also kind of like the escapism of like a chosen secret. Like the family is like, keep that part of you hidden and away from everybody else, even from me, your family member, right? But then we see moments where like the couples run go to hotel rooms or like come into a room when everybody else is away or what have you, and it's like LGBT like gay couples, the straight couples, and all of them kind of have this sort of place that they escape to that is like sort of rented and borrowed in a way, even if it's like it's her house, but he's borrowing it, right? For his shenanigans, right? So where's the healing in that kind of escapism? Like you don't you know you're escaping from what you either are supposed to be or not, or what you've been told you're supposed to be, right? Because even all of that is subjective, right? Mm-hmm. But like, you know, where does the healing factor in that sort of freedom come into play when you have a life that's kind of set up where you have to kind of get away from what you are, you know?
So I think it depends on, you know, those moments in the stories. You know, they're in this hotel room or they're in the backseat of a car in the hospice parking lot.
Not Daniel. Sorry, read not Daniel. Good God.
Please, for
Lord,
the life.
that was my favorite. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay.
Go ahead.
You know, that sometimes we forget that when we meet people, they're on a point along a journey. You know, and it would be lovely if we could meet everybody at that healed place. And so I think a lot of the characters in this story, they're on the journey. They're going hopefully in the right direction. And so they're doing something subversive. They're doing something that, you know, the church and the larger culture might tell them you should be ashamed of this. And so I think one of the next step is you're doing this escapist thing. You're doing the secret thing. Have you shed the shame around it? Some people do and some people don't. I think about this, there's a story in the collection, and I just blanked on which one I was going to mention that had to do with that. Instructions for Married Christian Husbands. So this woman has affairs, serial affairs, always with Christian married men. And what I love talking to book clubs about is she free? And we know that she is the daughter of a woman who had an affair for a decade with a pastor. And so she's like, but I'm not going to be like her because I'm not dependent on these men. I have my own things. I set the rules of engagement. And so her name is Olivia. She would say that she's free, that she's different from her mother. But I think all of us, you know, we bring our you know, stuff to bear on the story, and we can ask, is that freer because she's still doing these things in secret? But it's on her terms. Is she free because she thinks she's, you know? So I like having the stories raise those questions for people rather than answer them. But I think that story kind of gets at what you're saying. You know, at what point is it free, and then who gets to decide that?
Who gets to decide that?
To decide freedom. Isn't that a novel concept? With the world changing rapidly, why do we think we hold women to these traditional standards of straight partnerships and marriage, like in the story Eula?
Because it serves men, you know, I mean, because the world is changing, but that has not changed. that part has not changed, you know? And I think what we're seeing is actually a backlash against the strides that women have made socially and economically and politically. I just don't remember before 10 years ago, like people talking so much about submission and what is it, trad wife?
Traditional ways.
Yeah, all, like this research, that's not coincidental. Yeah. You know, it's like we're trying to reinstitute and roll back, you know, what many of us would consider progress, and saying that, you know, you don't need all of these other things, you know, that this is not your natural place or whatever it is. And I just think it's just a power grab that when people, I mean, it's just like what white people did, you know, when, what was it, after emancipation, and we had these political gains, we had, you know, Black people in Congress, and then, you know,
forget
exactly.
Reconstruction.
And then we had the KKK and the you know, the terror that went through the South to put us back in our place. And I think something similar is happening for women with less success, you know, thankfully, because a lot of it is it's social and it's more ideological. Nobody's physically doing these things, though with Roe versus Wade, there we go, you know, so that's all of it is connected. All of it is connected.
And it's because it's like, you know, we have these two pillars of, in your answer, the sort of church and state, right? In another way, it's like there is science and then religion, right? So it's like people love to break apart the two a lot of the times. And I think that's what's interesting, how in The Secret Lives of Church Ladies, we read a story called How to Make Love to a Physicist, right? So my question is.
Come on, that better be your story, girl. I know you dancing right there. We gonna get into it. I see you dancing.
So we go. Well, let me hit you with this word.
Amen, amen.
Let's talk about the entanglement that the two.
Eric and Lyra.
Yes, that those two pillars, specifically religion and science, kind of find themselves in through Eric and Lyra, their story. Like how did that theme come to be, and where did you tussle with it and things like that?
So I feel like I've been, when I was churched, I used to try and grapple with these questions, like, reconciling, what the Bible says with, theories of evolution and things like that. And also, questions about like dinosaurs and in these things. And I remember one time, because one of the big questions is, if the Bible is true, why isn't there a mention of the dinosaurs or whatever? And I remember being in a Christian bookstore once, and there was like a children's book, and that was literally like the title was basically, and I was like, an answer! I'm so excited, and it was basically a lot of pages that said because the Bible said so. So it's just this like self-referential thing, and that didn't help me at all. So that was part of my unlearning and understanding, the Bible as allegory. And, it was not literally 7 days, things like that. So that's part of it. And then another part was I met a physicist, a Black physicist that I developed a crush on. And I wrote the first. I was
giving
like,
true story, Hollywood true story,
much,
MTV real
very
life.
much.
You said you was too scared to write nonfiction.
Right.
So I was like head over heels, and I wrote the first lines of the story. How do you make love to a physicist? You do it on Pi Day. Pi is a constant, also irrational, and something else. And I was like, I don't know what this is gonna be, but I'm really, really feeling him. And I left that little piece. Life went on. The crush didn't turn into anything. It was not reciprocated, unfortunately. But by then, I knew I was writing a short story collection. So I was going back to all my little snippets. And I was like, this could be in the collection. How could it develop? And so I was like, I already got the bones, which is, I know that there's this person, this narrator, she's going to make love to a physicist. It's going to happen on March 14th, which is Pi Day. I just got to make things complicated for them until they get to that point. Go, that was, I kind of had the framework. But I'm still friends with this physicist. And so as I'm writing the relationship between these two characters, it came up. She had the question that I had for this guy, which is, how do you, I assumed that he was an atheist. And so we had a whole conversation, and I ended up asking him, like, can I use some of this in the book? And he knows about the story.
Okay, because I was about to ask next. So I was like, does he know
all about it? He's
him?
very supportive of the book. People DM me all the time, and like somebody was sending me pictures of Black physicists. Like, is this him? Is this him? And I'm like, you'll never guess, and I would never tell, and he's not gonna tell. Like, he's very, very private. And
Not
so
being messy in the DMs.
And so it was, so I was shocked that he was an atheist that he wasn't an atheist, sorry, that he had been raised Catholic. And so he told me how he reconciled it. And I used some of that, for Eric and Lyra when they have their conversation about it, because it's really, Lyra is kind of me, just trying to understand how to make sense of what she's been taught versus knowing that there's a bigger world beyond the very small kind of world that she's been taught. So that was part of it. And then I did a lot of that story probably had the most research in it, because I knew that there was some astronomical phenomenon that would be a great piece of literature. I didn't know what it was. And so I don't even remember what I Googled, but I stumbled upon the whole black hole and the gas and all of that stuff. And so I wrote that scene. And then when I was done with the whole story, I showed it to my physicist friend, and I was like, did I get the science right? And he was like, almost. And so so the part where Eric corrects Lyra is where he corrected, because she said the distance, and he said distance is plural. And that's the part that I didn't get right. So I pull that into it also. But nothing else in that story is,
I'm about to be spicy. This ain't my question that I had. But what did he feel after he read it? I'm assuming he read it after it was written.
Yes.
What was his comments, if you would like to share with the class?
It was all very sweet, but there's not a romantic spark between us, but he is so proud, he can't tell anybody, but every now and then he sends me a private message and whatnot, but he gets a kick out of it. So
okay, look at him. So we talked about it a little bit. HBO, Tessa Thomas. Wow. Can you share like a little bit of how it came to be and like the status of that?
Yeah. So it happened kind of in two directions. So the book was out in the world, and then there were people in Hollywood who were reaching out to me, saying that they were interested. And I had a film and TV agent, and I actually got a film and TV agent just when Church Ladies came out. The year before, because they announced your books, like when you make your book deal, and it was in Publishers Marketplace, and it was just like a 1-sentence little description of the book. And there's a film and TV agent that reached out to my literary agent and said, we might want to represent this book. Let's stay in touch. So every time I did drafts, revisions, sent things to my publisher, we would always send her a copy. And then when the book came out, she was like, yep, we're ready. We want to represent it. So when people came to me, and I have a friend who, works in Hollywood, she was interested in adapting it. Erica Alexander, Max from Living Single.
Wow, yeah.
She reached
room
out.
just went.
I'm not gonna get into all the how we got
Maxine
connected.
Shaw,
but somebody
attorney at
was
law.
like, she, some other people who probably wouldn't want me to mention their names. I hope Erica's okay with that.
Girl, you good.
Yeah, she's fine.
But
She
so
cool.
there was the interest coming this way, and then there's a formal pitching process where my film and TV agent put together a pitch package and sent it out to places like Shondaland and Shonda's Rhimes' company and Oprah and all of those folks, and cast a really wide net. A lot of people said no, but a lot of people said yes, and so we had maybe like 4 or 5 offers on the table. And there are a lot of details. They don't just
Just 5.
Just 4 or 5, little thing.
They don't, it's not just like, here's some money. They cover everything from how much they're going to pay you to option your work for a year, and then every year that if it's not done in development, they pay you again. And I have writer friends that their projects have never been made, and every year they just get another check because somebody wants to hold on to it. But then there's if you sell it, how much are you will you get paid? When you're working on the pilot, when you turn in the first draft, how much you're going to pay? When it's on TV, my name has to be the same size font as all these details. There's a red carpet event. I can bring one guest. Like, they were hammering all the details out.
What about your family though? We black. How that gonna work?
One person.
We were fighting over graduation tickets.
Yeah, so it was like once a certain entities showed interest, we had what they call creative calls, and they tell you their vision. They ask you your vision. You see who you feel kind of comfortable with. So we did all of that. We got the offers in. And it took some time, but we were doing the counter offers. And again, my agent had this spreadsheet of 12 things, and they said this, we countered these 12 things. It was a lot. So the night we were about to send in the counter offers, HBO Max swooped in and we want to get in, and we have somebody wonderful attached, but we can't tell you who it is yet. Can you wait one more day? And we were like, oh my God, everybody's going to revolt. It is HBO Max, and and so we waited, and then we had the creative call, and the person attached was Tessa Thompson. She was just signing her first look deal with them. That's why they couldn't tell us until she had signed. And the conversation with her, she asked me something that nobody else asked me, which was, what was I afraid of going wrong in this process?
Wow.
And so aside from Tessa being Tessa, part of it was her asking me that question. And I was like, she was like, what would keep you up at night or make you unhappy about the adaptation? And I said, I would be sad if it turned into Greenleaf. I said, no shade to Greenleaf, but
wait, yeah.
But
I just
Now, wait a minute
ascended.
now.
I just have ascended.
May was about to jump out. I was like, hold on. Like,
Where's she at?
My thing about Greenleaf is that that's different from my book is that I wanted to make sure that this show is about the women and the churches in their orbit, not the church with the women in the orbit. So that's I was like that. It would make me sad if this book decentered the women. It would make me sad if these Black women showed up and everybody was light skinned.
Oh, T.
I
Yeah, we can run applause for that.
There are light skinned people in the book, but everybody's not light skinned. And if everybody was 30, I was like, because it's four generations of Black women. And so I want 4 generations of Black women that look in all the ways like we look in the world. I said that those are the things that would make me sad. And so she was like, we were on the same page. HBO Max was on the same page. That's
Wow.
wow.
So where are you now?
So-
Now the writer strike's over.
Yeah,
that's
so
right.
we turned in the series Bible, which is like the series format document, big overview document. Pilot is written. We had to do that document, and 2 days later the strike happened, and so we couldn't get any feedback. They couldn't communicate with us at all until the strike was over. But then we got word that despite a lot of cuts and things that didn't survive during the strike, Church Ladies is still in the pipeline. We have not gotten our green light yet, but it is still in development. So
Don't worry, John Legend gonna give you that green light.
Exactly.
Thank you.
I
Thank
mean,
you.
you know, something, yeah.
And also, I'm just saying, because you brought up Greenleaf, First Lady May,
Brandon,
Lynn
please.
Whitfield, I saw the
Listen,
best
all
meme the other
love,
day.
All love.
I saw the best meme the other day. It said, Lynn Whitfield may always play evil, but she ain't never played broke. That took me out.
Listen,
That took me
facts.
out. But she could do a little
Facts.
moment. She got a secret life too, or whatever, you know what I mean? But
She was at Renaissance
James don't
in New
know
Orleans.
everything. Sorry, I'm going to Greenleaf. So let's just, before we get into we're coming up to talking with y'all about questions you have. Just want to talk with you about like just your process as the writer. Like, what simple question? Well, maybe not simple answer. How'd you know it was a short story collection versus a novel?
So I didn't at first.
Mhm.
I didn't know until, gosh, I had written 2 of the stories, Eula and maybe not Daniel, I don't know. I have been trying to write a novel since 2007. The book that I just sold, I have been working on since 2007. And I took so many detours just trying to make a living, and because nobody's paying you. Well, now I'm getting paid to write this book, but at the beginning, nobody's paying you to write the book. So I was writer for hire. I was a freelancer. I was doing everything. I was teaching. I was editing. You name it. And it left very little time to write this novel. And took a whole detour into parenting writing. And ended up writing a co-parenting book with my ex-husband. That's actually my first book, and that's how I got an agent. And so my agent knew I was working on a novel, and she gave me a lot of advice, and she was encouraging me, but I was just stalling for a lot of different reasons. And then I'd say around 2014, 2015, my agent also knew I was working on some short stories. She'd heard me read them. She lived in Pittsburgh too, so I'd be at events and I'm reading. And she said, while you're on hiatus from this novel, which was very generous of her to say, because I was like, oh, you think it's a hiatus? Okay. She said, I like these church lady stories. So she called them that. I didn't really connect the dots. And she said, maybe you could get intentional about writing a collection of these church lady stories. And you can always come back to the novel. And she said, specifically, if you can get 3 of the stories published, we'll go to market with a partial manuscript. And that just felt more doable than finish this novel I've been working on for all these years, and I'm not sure how to fix it, and all of this. So 2 stories were written. I wrote a 3rd one. I kept writing stories, and I kept sending them out. So by the time I had 3 stories written, I had 3 stories published. I had written 6. Mm-hmm. So when we went out with the partial manuscript, there were 6 stories in it. Mm-hmm. And then that's it. In West Virginia University Press was the only offer that I got. All of the big publishers passed.
Wow.
Fools.
Yeah.
Right. Big fools. I bet they mad now. It's giving Mike Jones.
Okay, that's on my playlist. You know, I told you I made my playlist.
Yeah, I know. You told me, yeah.
Sometimes you gotta hit it with it. Back then they
Back
didn't
then
want
they
me.
didn't want me.
Now I'm hot, they all on me. So now we're gonna open up to you guys. This is phenomenal that we have someone of her caliber here. So if anybody has any questions, please raise your hand. I will come to
Yeah,
you.
and we'll put you on the mic.
If not, we got more questions. Don't worry. No?
We
Oh,
got two
okay.
questions. Yeah, I'll go there.
I got you. You're welcome.
Hi, congratulations on the astronomical success.
Thank you.
That's something to be so proud of.
Thank
I'm very happy for you. So I have a process question because I write vignettes, right? So like super short things, but mine are creative nonfiction. So part of my question is, when you're writing the stories, like do you like finish one at a time, or like do you do some like you have like multiple stages at different points? And also, do you get the characters confused, or like what's going on? You know, if like this story's happening over here, like does someone accidentally end up in there if you're doing them simultaneously? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. My goodness, I always have multiple stories going. Always, always, always. And sometimes by story, it could be 2 lines and it could be 20 pages, and they can sit there for a week, they can sit there for a year, and sometimes, I come back to them when I come back to them. I don't necessarily get them confused, but there are 2 stories I'm working on right now. And I'm trying to think that one of them right now is titled Last Dance, and and the other one is called Benoit, and we'll just leave it at that for people who know what that is. And I haven't figured out the difference between those characters. So I'll be thinking of things and I can't remember like, oh, should this be for this story or that story? But that's telling me one of 2 things. I gotta differentiate those characters better, or maybe they're linked stories and it's the same character. And I haven't figured that part out yet.
Some other hands raised.
Hi. Yeah, similar to the earlier question, I'm just really curious about your process. How do you get it done as busy as you are?
So my answer to that question lately has been, because the last month I turned 52, and so I just say whatever I want
Come on,
now.
birthday. Come on,
Just
Virgo's
say
groove.
whatever. So this is what I've been saying to people when they ask the question about balance and how do you get it done, especially when you're busy. It's usually a question I hear from women, usually from women who have children. And I will say, you have to disappoint people to get it done. You have to say no to other people so that you can say yes to what you want to do. And I can say that now because my daughters are almost 20 and almost 25. Like, you can cook less, you can do less things with them. Like, they will be fine. At the time, you think, all of us are worried that our kids are not getting enough of us. And that's that pressure you were talking about earlier for women, that, we have to show up in all the ways for everybody. We're not taught in church or anywhere else. It's important that you show up for yourself.
Amen.
And so that's what we have to do, is show up for ourselves. And that inevitably means somebody is going to be disappointed, family, friends. And sometimes it's a cycle, it's not all the time. Even if it's, I'm spending the next 4 Saturdays working on my project, so I can't do anything else. I can't drive you anywhere. No, I can't come to your party or whatever. But it's just for, this month or whatever. Or this fall, I'm not saying yes to anything. I'm, just setting that time for yourself and really scheduling it like you do your dentist appointment, your doctor, anything else, that we just keep those appointments. But we rarely keep the appointments with ourselves. Something comes along and quickly we'll just change it. And I also say, okay, if you have to change it, right? Like, somebody needs to go to the hospital because we can still take the children to the hospital. Then you reschedule, go right back in and pick another date for yourself. But treating those times with yourself as the most important things on your calendar and not wavering for them and letting other people be disappointed. And it's hard with writing because it's not like you are, let's say we have a jewelry maker here, right? She makes jewelry.
Xander and
everybody's like, oh, we can see what you're doing, right? And she probably doesn't have friends and family going, what are you doing? We can see it. But when you're writing and it takes years or a decade, people aren't as sympathetic, or I will even say as respectful. I think it's disrespectful when people question you about your time. I tell my one daughter, stay out of my pockets and stay out of my calendar, because she's always like trying to.
That's Black mom math.
Yeah, like don't worry about what I'm doing or when I'm doing or what money I have or what I'm spending or not. So you kind of have to do that, and people have to adjust, and they need time to adjust. And you can even be nice to them about, like, I know this is an adjustment. You're not used to me telling you no. I understand you're disappointed. Disappointment's part of life. So it's like you're going to be disappointed if you don't finish your book, but they can be disappointed and they'll get over it. You need to finish your book.
Amen.
Hi, how you doing?
Hello.
So I read your book probably like a year ago at this point. So I was flipping through my friend's copy to see. I'm like, okay, I remember this story. I remember this story. Ooh, that one was good. But I was curious about how you chose the different songs in your book. I know for me, Forever Mine by the OJs was my grandparents' song. And my granddad had died probably a couple months before I read your book. So that being the last song in there really resonated for me. So I'm curious, what are the backstories for you for some of the songs?
Yes.
I said Eddie.
When Eddie Levert comes, the last story in the collection, Eddie Levert was my mother's, the OJs was my mother's favorite group. So growing up as a kid, I listened to a lot of OJs, and Forever Mine is my favorite OJ song. And that story was my attempt to kind of understand the dynamic between my mother, my grandmother, and my great-grandmother, because my mother and my grandmother both ended up being caretakers for mothers who had not been good mothers to them. And you see, I just left. Like I'm out. I can't. But they were all in that little house just driving each other mad. And everybody was sad, and we talked about, what we don't talk about. I had heard the stories of, the ways that my mother wished she needed to be mothered differently, and so did my grandmother. But yet they, took care of they each took care of their mother until she died. And I used to wonder, like, what would that be like? And I wasn't sympathetic to either of them when they were going through it, because I left and was living my own life, and which I did need to do. But I do wish that I had talked to them more about what is this like and so forth. But I was so busy trying to like I don't want this to be me. I mean, when my mom died, she was in hospice and I was there, but it wasn't this sort of enmeshed, dysfunctional, resentful. It was none of that, thank goodness. But that's what I was kind of witnessing from afar. And so that story just was me, especially with my mom, because I knew my mom better than I knew my grandmother. And so that's where that story came from, and that particular music. And I remember when I was little, my mom did take a picture with Eddie Levert, and she was so proud of the picture. And I didn't know who he was. All I knew was that my mom was really happy and this man was famous. That's all I knew.
Hi, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
As a Black woman, particularly a Black Christian woman from the South, I felt like these stories, there were elements in each of these stories that facilitated opportunities for healing in me
Yes.
or asking questions. And I'm curious, for you writing them, what opportunities for healing did you find?
Very unexpected. We were talking earlier, I didn't experience a lot of what people call church hurt. And I had not been in the church for almost a decade when I started writing these stories. So I was writing a lot very much from a safe distance from it. I think the healing for me came in the mother-daughter dynamics. I didn't plan that. When I was writing these stories, it was like my themes are Black women, sex, and the Black church. And then there's mother-daughter stuff all throughout. Like clearly, I still had some stuff to work out. And it's all from the perspective of the daughters. So clearly I had some specific things to still work out. And and I think, because when my mom died, I felt like, oh, we said all the things we needed to say. But I think there's some more things that I needed to say or work through or just kind of bear witness to myself. And then I thought, after Church Ladies came out, well, what if I was intentional about mothers and daughters? And so I'm working on another collection. Some of the stories in that are mothers and daughters, but from the perspective of both mothers and daughters. And I was like, let's just dive right in. But yeah, Church Ladies revealed to me that there was still more to be said. I can't say it to my mother now, but through these stories, I feel like she and I are having conversations.
It's really beautiful.
Jason.
Hey. Craft question.
Okay.
And this, what I always ask, what tools are you using to write? And now that your stories are going from one medium to another, how did it, what was the process of taking it from writing it as fictive literature that's going on the page to making it, putting it in script form?
I rely on electronic tools a lot. I have lost the ability to write a story by hand. It's terrible. I can't do it. I'll be at the beach with a laptop and a battery pack brick sitting under an umbrella. I've lost it. Google Docs. I don't trust Word because Word crashes and things get lost, but haven't had any problems with Google Docs. I think part of what I like about being online when I write is I fall down all kinds of research rabbit holes and get a lot of ideas that way. And so I know some writers like shut off the internet or they go somewhere where there is no internet, but I find I can still get my work done, and those digressions actually are helpful. I have lots of notes documents, even for like a single story. I can have pages of just research that I've done. And so certainly for this novel, I've got, whole documents of research. So using online tools like that. And then for script writing, we use Final Draft. And writing, I had to learn to be more succinct. I had to learn to be more visual. I had to learn to trust myself more, because I think for me as a writer, when I write a lot of exposition and backstory and all of that, it's like I don't trust. It's two things. It used to be I don't trust the reader to get it, and so I'm over telling it. That's my problem in drafting. Or I'm still telling myself the story. With screenwriting, you don't get you just got to put it right there. Scene, next scene, next scene, next scene. So it forces me to write in a more disciplined and kind of regimented way. I have a co-writer named Tori Sampson, who is a playwright by training, and she also writes for television. So I have learned a ton from her. And so I would watch how she wrote, because we were sharing documents. And then we edit each other. And so she would come in and I'd have, a piece of dialogue that's like this, and she just cut it down to its essence, and she does really bold things on the page, or has characters do things that are just big. Like I had to learn to make things bigger and louder, So that's been one of the differences. And I'm seeing it in my prose. So now I feel like my prose is tighter too in my fiction.
Again, thank you for being here. I noticed that with your book that you co-wrote with your ex-husband, and obviously with this book, you're incredibly honest. What is that like for you to have so many vulnerabilities out for readers who might not know you personally? How do you put so much of yourself on the page without not wanting to do that?
It's sort of weird in the sense that people always don't know what's me on the page until I say it, I think about Church Ladies, there are 9 stories, tons of characters. They can't all be me. right? But there are kernels of me in each of them. And so fortunately, I haven't had too many people, or I don't think I've had anybody like, get too personal. I think I can think of one interviewer who was asking me stuff about sex. And I'm like, just because I write about sex, like you wouldn't ask any other writer about their sex life, like, why are you asking me this? So most people tend to, be respectful. And that's my only thing. I don't mind being vulnerable, but I preserve my privacy. I also want to preserve my children's privacy. That's more important to me than anything, because anything I put out there, I'm, comfortable with people talking to me about things that I actually put out there. What I don't want is people like bothering my children, so that's sort of my line. Other than that, I'm pretty much an open book, when I want to be. The co-parenting book, even that, like we wrote some chapters like, this is how we do it. But what we wanted to be clear, and there were some publishers who didn't understand this, we weren't telling people, because my ex and I get along, like we weren't saying, okay, this is how you have to do it. We assumed the worst. You cannot stand this other person. Okay, let's start there. Here's what you can do.
My parents on the page,
here's what, and so there's only so much of us in there, because I'm like, if I am struggling with co-parenting, I don't want to hear about y'all going to Disney World together, so there's not, so there is some of me, but I do protect a lot of things, more for my children than for myself.
I think we could take how many more questions? One more question.
Hi. So I know a lot of people tend to talk about the best ways to start a story, how to pack a punch to draw a reader in, but I wanted to know about your approach to ending a story. Where do you draw the line, and when do you decide that a story is done?
Usually I'm writing something against the deadline and I'm procrastinating. So that's when it's done, because there's no more time. But what feels right to me, I always say, is a sigh, right? So, and a sigh has a lot of different properties. So it can be like pleasurable sigh, it could be a frustrated sigh, it could be resignation, it could be a revelation, relief, all of those things. And so I'm going for a feeling for me, but it doesn't always translate for somebody else. And so then when it goes to my agent or somebody else who's reading for me, I can see if they also feel that this was a good place to stop. The story Peach Cobbler, the original ending for Peach Cobbler was different than what's in the book. And I love that ending. I aged Olivia, so she was like middle-aged and she had her own bakery. And there's a moment where Trevor comes back and they bond over the fact that their parents had this secret affair. And she teaches him how to make a peach cobbler. And when it's in the oven, they're having sex in the kitchen. I just thought that was perfect, right? Doesn't that sound lovely?
That sounds amazing.
Perfect. Full circle moment.
And
Full
then
circle.
I had like 5
Relatable.
people say this is not
Brandon,
working.
please.
They were not feeling that ending at all. And normally, you can like ignore one person, you really love something, but 5 readers that I really respected just said it doesn't ring true, or they would use language like that. And so, I killed it, and that was so hard. And maybe that's why in the TV show Olivia is now older and she has a bakery, because I'm like, I'm gonna get that one way or another. But yeah, so you go with your gut, but then also have readers tell you if it rings true.
So the final question, what are you doing next that is just for you?
In life or reading?
As
or
a
writing?
person, just as a
person.
just
As a human.
person, as a human.
For me, I am going, well, does this count? I'm going to be writing, but I'm going to Belize to write with Bernice McFadden. Miss
Bury the
Bernice.
lead.
The Secret Lives of Mama Day.
I'm going with Miss Bernice to. Well, it's called Sisters Writing Summit.
Oh, Secret Lives of Sugar. That's what it is. My
Sugar.
bad. I got
Mama
my books
Day
mixed
is
up.
Gloria
That's
Naylor.
Naylor. My bad. Sorry, Lord Jesus. Sorry.
But it's called Sisters Writing Summit, and she doesn't teach there. I think the faculty changes every year, and this year she's there and a couple of other writers. But when I saw she was going to be there, I'm like, I'm going. It's one that if you're a writer, you don't have to apply and be chosen. If you can pay and you get there quickly enough, you're there. And then there's like a wait list and all that in case they run out. And people, I have a friend who got off the wait list and she's going to, but. So I'll be working, but it's something like I'm not teaching. Like normally something like this, I would be teaching, and I taught several times this past summer, and so this is nice to just come and be the student.
Love that. Be the student.
Put me in your suitcase.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, I was just trying to be free.
Just trying to be free. Exactly. Everybody, let's give a round of applause to Deesha, please.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deesha. Thank y'all.
So this wraps up another episode of ... but make it books.
Thank y'all so much for watching and listening to us talk. And then we appreciate everybody being here. We have to shout out to you do your side.
Yes. Sacred Touch, Xander and Olive, of course, our home base, Charm City Books.
We have another author in the house. We have Naomi Rivers over here promoting her book that she and her wife wrote. We have Love More, Bmore out here too, as well. And then, of course, we have Charm City Books, our main hub for the best bookstore in Baltimore, not my words, the chosen across places, of course. And then we naturally, of course, have a great non-alcoholic sponsor called Hopscotch Bottle Shop. And they have some really good, delicious stuff that's, again, right here in local that is non-alcoholic and it's like real. Like real ingredients is what I'm saying. As a craft bartender experience, that's important to me. And it's good. And just special thanks also to Center Stage, Baltimore Center Stage, for having us. Annalisa Diaz, Missy, I see you in here, our pro. And we just appreciate everybody being here. Again, just being under the sound of our voice, Deesha's voice. Please go forward, and I'm going to ask you guys to do a few favors, please. Follow us on Instagram, But Make It Books Pod. And also, please go and review our podcast. If you listen to any of them, review us. If it's a 5-star, thank you so much. We love you, appreciate you. If it's a 1-star, come say it to my face. Either way, just give us that review. We appreciate it. It gives us viewership, visibility, and just helps us continue to grow so that we can, Deesha's really blessing us, y'all. She really is, and we would love to be able to do things with even more authors that are also, getting them big deals, and all that stuff, and bring them back home right here to Baltimore because we really do deserve. We really do.
And also we have 2 more authors that will be on the pod, and then we have a event that is churning up, so make sure a live event next year with another author that's very well known as well. So definitely keep in touch and follow us, as Brandon said, and as always, keep healing bookishly, y'all.
Yes, please. Thank y'all so much. Enjoy everything. Take care, y'all.
Thank you. And Deesha will be signing right over here. Yes, right over here. So if you want your book signed, or if you would like to buy a book, that table there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey y'all, it's Niccara. Thank you so much for listening to the episode. If you like it, please make sure you review, rate, and subscribe to our podcast. Of course, sharing is caring, so make sure you share with your friends and let everyone know to come into Charm City Books to get our recommendation. And thank you so much for listening again, and I'll see y'all. Be good.